a donation. It's gotten great reviews. People love it.
The president works on his ballroom as his war council visits Mickey Mouse.
The Republican Senator Lindsey Graham enjoying some time at Disney World in Florida.
Tonight, Senator Chris Murphy on 1 month of Trump's chaotic war. Then,
if you could pick one word to describe the state of the economy right now, what would that one word be?
All f***ed up.
The president's collapsing support as gas prices hit $4 a gallon nationally. And as Israel's war expands in the Middle East, exclusive reporting on Israeli settler violence in the West Bank.
We saw the guy with the flock. He immediately went up the hill, and now there's a car speeding towards us.
But All In starts right now. Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. We are now over a month into Donald Trump's war on Iran, and there is still no plan. Every day we're learning more about how little this administration seems to care about the global crisis they started. More than 4,800 people are dead across the region. That includes 3,400 in Iran, 25 in Israel, 13 American service members. Today, Iranian media reported that U.S. and Israeli attacks targeted an orphanage outside of Tehran, killing 2 people and injuring 5 others. MSNOW has not verified that report, but U.S. officials have yet to comment on it. You might also remember those reports about the girls' school in Iran that we've covered quite heavily, the one that was destroyed by U.S.-made cruise missiles at the beginning of the war, the one that Donald Trump said with zero evidence whatsoever was an inside job by the Iranians. More than 150 children were reported killed. Well, today, the New York Times is reporting that on the same day that school was hit, which is the first day of the war, the U.S. used a new, untested ballistic missile to bomb another elementary school and a nearby sports hall, killing at least 21 people. Those are the human costs of this war that President Trump started. There are also, of course, the economic ones. Since the war started, Iran has effectively shut down nearly all traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point with about 20% of the world's energy supply passing through. And you already know from experience that gas is $4 a gallon. Diesel fuel is $6 or $7 a gallon in some parts of the country, and diesel fuel, of course, is how a lot of things move around. The situation is far more dire in much of the rest of the world. We haven't gotten to the bad part yet, but parts of Asia are already there. The Philippines just declared a national emergency as it contemplates major oil shortages, not high prices, actual physical shortages. Sri Lanka is one of several countries that's already started rationing fuel. They've also made Wednesday a holiday to keep people home, to save fuel and commuting. And across the world, countries like Australia, Egypt, and Thailand are making public transportation free. They're cutting work hours, asking people to work from home, telling them to turn off the AC, all to conserve precious energy. So, when and how does it end? Over the weekend, U.S. officials told the Wall Street Journal that Trump was now weighing a ground operation to secure an estimated half-ton of enriched uranium in Iran. It's not clear that Americans' intelligence knows where that uranium is or whether it's been scattered, but the effort would extend the war for weeks at least. Then today, Trump aides told the Journal that Trump says he's willing to end the war, even with Iran keeping control of the Strait of Hormuz, because the U.S. believes that forcing the waterway back open would mean extending the military mission, which makes it sound like maybe things will end soon. But then the U.S. also ordered a 3rd aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, to deploy from Virginia to the Middle East today. So, as you might be asking from the first day of this war, back on February 28th, what is going on with the war? Why is the president who declared that war talking instead about his big, beautiful ballroom?
I thought I'd do this now because it's easier. I'm so busy that I don't have time to do this. But I'm fighting wars and other things. But this is very important because this is going to be with us for a long time, and it's going to be, I think it'll be the greatest ballroom anywhere in the world.
That is not an aberration. The war is happening, people are dying, gas prices spiking, world leaders saying things to their reporters from South Korea to Italy, saying, I'm staying up at night staring at the ceiling, I'm so freaked out about this. There's the president. He's got his ballroom laser focused. In fact, today, Trump lost it on social media after a federal judge issued an order halting those ballroom plans, saying they need approval from Congress, something which it seems to me they obviously do. And that outburst online came minutes after Trump bragged about his prowess at groundskeeping. Quote, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum and I are working on fixing the absolutely filthy reflecting pool between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument. This work was supposed to be done by the Biden administration, but Sleepy Joe doesn't know what clean or proper maintenance is. The president and secretary do. Again, laser focused. And that's how the president's spending his time day after day as thousands of Americans put themselves in harm's way at his orders. Thousands who are already dodging missiles falling from the sky, who have been forced to evacuate bases that have been hit. And what about the other architects of this war?
I go back to South Carolina. I'm asking them to send their sons and daughters over to the Mideast. What I want you to do in the Mideast, to our friends in Saudi Arabia and other places, step forward and say, this is my fight too.
On Sunday, TMZ posted photos of that man, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, at Disney World in Florida, strolling through the Magic Kingdom with a bubble wand in his hand. You see it there in his right hand. Seems to be enjoying himself. Who wouldn't? It's the Magic Kingdom. Even getting on the park's famous Space Mountain roller coaster. Graham told TMZ he was at a meeting Friday with Trump officials in South Florida, and he went to Orlando afterwards to meet up with some friends. Even some right-wing podcasters were beside themselves over the irony.
When I first saw this, I thought it was a parody. No, there's video and photos of him at Disney World by himself with a pink princess wand.
And now he goes to Disney World while they deploy to Iran, and he's blowing bubbles. This seems like some sort of weird fever dream I'm in. Is this real?
Now, to be fair to Lindsey Graham, even though he is one of the chief architects of the war and based on the reporting, one of the most sort of biggest advocates for it, it's not like he's the actual Secretary of Defense tasked with executing the war. That job, of course, falls to Pete Hegseth, who spent much of the day browbeating allies for not cleaning up the mess that the U.S. has made in the Strait of Hormuz.
There are countries around the world who ought to be prepared to step up on this critical waterway as well. It's not just the United States Navy. Last time I checked, there was supposed to be a big bad Royal Navy that could be prepared to do things like that as well.
I mean, you almost have to admire the sheer hubris. They started a war out of nowhere, a war that didn't have to be waged, a war of choice. They blundered into a strategic dead end. They have made the implicit control of the Strait of Hormuz explicit. And now they're what? Pissed off at the Brits for not cleaning up their mess? It's not at all clear that Hegseth himself was prepared for how this war would play out, with one big, important, and apparent exception. Get this. A broker for Pete Hegseth attempted to make a big investment in major defense companies in the weeks leading up to the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. 3 people familiar with the matter tell the Financial Times. Hegseth's broker at Morgan Stanley contacted BlackRock in February about making a multi-million-dollar investment in the asset manager's Defense Industrials Active Exchange-Traded Fund, the people said, shortly before the U.S. launched military action against Tehran. The inquiry on behalf of the high-profile potential client was flagged internally at BlackRock, according to the people familiar with the matter. Think about that one for a second. Try to wrap your brain around that one. U.S. Secretary of Defense, most important thing he'll ever do in his whole life, ordering U.S. troops into harm's way, planning a war. Just takes a little time, reportedly, to try to invest millions of dollars in a defense industry fund on the eve of the war he's overseeing so he can make a fortune on it? A Pentagon spokesman called the story entirely false and fabricated. But the trade request was reportedly serious enough it alarmed people at BlackRock. And though it did not go through, experts note that attempted insider trading is also a crime. It seems clear that people who launched this war saw it as nothing but an opportunity for profit or a poll bump. The scale of the destruction and pain they have wrought is truly incredible, and it could get much worse. Every indication we have says it's going to get worse. More people will die or be maimed. Energy and oil shortages will kill or impoverish many more, and the architects of the war could not possibly care less. They can't hear you over the roller coaster. Just moments ago, the White House announced Trump will give an address to the nation tomorrow night at 9 p.m. for an important update on Iran. We're assuming that it will be from the White House and not from Disney World. Maybe it will be mission accomplished. Senator Chris Murphy is a Democrat of Connecticut. He serves on the Foreign Relations Committee. Joins me now. Nice to have you here in person.
Yeah, great to be here.
Let's start on the Hegseth reporting. I mean, you've got, Financial Times, a very serious news outlet. We have not independently confirmed this reporting. They say this happened. The Pentagon says it's fabricated. It seems to me at a first level, there's some factual issue that we should get to the bottom of, right?
Yeah, I mean, for a trade to raise moral scruples at BlackRock tells you that it was probably a pretty dicey trade. Listen, it does seem that the president and the people around him are spending most of their time either working on the ballroom or trying to get rich off of this war. Hegseth's trade is an abomination in and of itself, but we also know that there were a lot of people likely in the White House or close to the president who were making all sorts of trades right ahead of the invasion on oil markets, but also on prediction markets. A lot of people got very rich off of the U.S. decision to go to war, and 13 Americans killed. This is the most corrupt White House in the history of the country, and war seems to be giving them more opportunities to engage in corruption.
I mean, I have to say, my expectations for what these people do are already, in the gutter. But the thought of planning this war and then making some note to yourself on your iPhone Notes app or a Post-it on the thing of oh right, I gotta call my broker and get it. It's truly appalling. It knocks me back off my chair.
Yeah, and and you also have the president's kids on all sorts of boards of companies that are going to make money off of this war, including drone companies.
Yep.
I mean, the list is very long as to how the entire White House and the entire war operation is being monetized. And it is just true that, well, in and of itself, that corruption is unacceptable. It is also distracting the president and his incompetent team from at least trying to consult with the people who might clean up these messes.
Well, which gets us to the mess now. I mean, okay, here we are. We're a month in. I keep getting whiplash. It reminds me of COVID. In the morning it was social distancing and you got to stay away, and then it was everything's gonna be open by Easter. Remember that one, right? We come up on Easter. This idea that this new turn, which is we're going to accept Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz. We're sending the third carrier to the Middle East, but that the idea that we might just walk away and say, you guys figure it out, is truly galling. I mean, even by their standards.
Yeah, so it's similar to COVID in another respect, in that no matter how rosy Trump's assessment was, people were still watching their neighbors die, right? They were still seeing the death toll mount.
No amount of talking did anything to the virus. The virus is going to do what it's going to do.
Trump may declare victory in this next speech, but gas prices are going to continue to go up and up and up. Food prices are going to go up and up and up. People are going to die in America and all over the world. The carnage of this war is going to have a tail that is going to last likely for the rest of this year. So the reality is that if the war aim is now just to end it and to leave Iran in charge of the Strait, then you have unquestionably made Iran more powerful, right? Iran ends this war with more power, with more regional hegemony, with more influence in the Middle East than they started at the beginning of this war with. That is just a remarkable war aim to essentially say, we're going to end in a way that guarantees Iran is stronger rather than weaker.
Their parliament is even now discussing legislation to sort of formalize a tolling system in the Strait, which again didn't exist before. So this is a real thing that their national legislature's considering. At the same time, I can't help but feel again, I'll just put my cards on the table. My rooting interest is for this war to end as soon as possible. For people not to get killed, for people not to get blown up, and for American service members to get out of harm's way, and all the civilians. And it may be that the clearest way to do that is for Trump just to unilaterally announce to the nation tomorrow night at 9 that that's the case. And I guess I would take that. I mean, what is your preference here?
Oh, my clear preference is for this to end tomorrow.
Right. Okay. Right. So you're on the same page.
Yeah, because listen, every day the mismanagement and the competence gets deeper and deeper. I mean, remember, they are literally talking about an invasion of Karg Island, holding the island hostage in order to maybe convince the Iranians to stop mining the Strait. that is kind of like the old lady who swallowed the fly, right? Right. It's just we're going to get deeper and deeper in. Yes. We're going to do stupider and stupider things in order to clean up our previous mistakes. And the consequences of that, a ground invasion, that's not a dozen Americans dying, right? That's hundreds, if not thousands of Americans dying. So yes, this needs to stop because every single day it gets more insane and more dangerous.
The ballroom obsession. I just want to play, a federal judge said you have to go to Congress. Right. Again, this, not even at like a legal level. I just say a sort of like first pass, what are my instincts here? It's like, I think Congress should weigh in on it. But the president's very mad about this. He was ranting about the judge who halted it. Take a listen to what he had to say.
But basically, he's saying I need congressional approval. And he's so wrong. For 150 years, they've wanted a ballroom here. We're going to have the finest ballroom, I believe, anywhere in the world. And he said we need congressional approval. Well, they don't get congressional approval from the White House. When they do things, they don't, especially when we didn't ask for any tax money.
What's so striking to me is how palpably invested he is in this issue and how granular his knowledge of the plans of the ballroom are compared to the entire other portfolio of the sitting president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't joking earlier when I said I think Trump is only working on the ballroom and money-making schemes for himself these days. Like, I think that might actually be true. He's clearly working a lot less than he ever has been before. He's still watching a lot of TV. He's still on social media. So when he's actually working, it may be true that he's working in a very detailed way on the ballroom. And again, remember, the ballroom is a corruption project as well, right? All of the donors to that ballroom are individuals or companies who have interest before the government, including some of the biggest defense contractors in the country who are no doubt whispering into the ears of Hegseth and Donald Trump that you know what might be good? A war that causes you to spend $200 billion of additional money on the products that we make.
Including, I mean, the reporting on this is a little hard to kind of nail down for understandable reasons. The U.S. Department of Defense is not going to say this is how many cruise missiles or Patriot interceptors. But it does seem that an enormous amount of extremely expensive equipment has been used. Yes. Like an incredibly, almost shocking, sizable portion of, say, our Tomahawk cruise missiles that we don't make a ton of. And directly, that's going to go back, the contractors who get the contract for that now are going to get contracts to make more. It's a pretty direct line.
It's a pretty direct line, but also it's a massive exposure for American national security. There are a lot more important reasons to use a Tomahawk missile than a preemptive invasion of a nation that does not pose an imminent threat to the United States. And so there are many in the national security infrastructure who are deeply worried about the fact that we are spending so much of our interceptor capacity in the Middle East when we may need them for actual threats against the United States in the future. And oh, by the way, they are now starting to preview that the way they are going to pay for this replenishment of missiles and interceptors is to cut people's health care. So they are now saying that we're going to pay for the war by cutting even deeper into Americans' health care.
Say more on this, because basically, so here's how I've tracked the reporting on this. It was the first there's reporting the Pentagon is going to ask for $200 billion. I've asked every Democrat who's appeared on my program, are you a yes or no on that? Everyone has said no. And most have said hell no. And even Adam Smith, who's a ranking member on armed services and is not a person who's by instinct opposed to defense spending, let's put it that way, is no, absolutely not. It looks like a $200 billion blank check is going to be a tough sell in both houses, particularly in the House where they, 3-vote margin. The sort of right wing of that caucus wants to see cuts. So now the plan is that they're going to cut healthcare more to pay for it? Is that real?
I don't know whether it's real, but it is true that the quickest way to make something more popular amongst Republicans is to cut people's health care.
Right, that's right.
So it's the war is...
The garnish.
Right, exactly. Well, this war really stinks. People hate it, but are you going to throw 10 million more people off the health care? Right. Sign me up.
Right. Yeah. Given all that, given the political position, and each day I marvel at this war as just one that has no natural political constituency. It was not ever sold to the American people. He had a State of the Union 7 days before he launched it, and he talked about it for 3 minutes, maybe.
Right.
I mean, So they're in a perilous political position. The president remains obsessed on basically two things: the ballroom and finding some mechanism to control who the electorate is in the midterms, and to basically federalize the elections in ways that will allow him to suppress the votes of people he thinks won't vote for him. And today there was a new executive order he signed that basically will have the U.S. Postal Service kind of act as the agent of the federal government in deciding who gets to vote. I don't think it's an overstatement. Here's him at the signing today. Do I have that? Oh, sorry. There he is today. That's just a voiceover. So this seems desperate to me. It'll be obviously, attack. It will be the subject of lawsuits immediately. Right. What do you make of it?
Well, I think you are right that he knows now, especially with this war and with the skyrocketing gas prices, that through conventional means his party is going to get their clock cleaned. And so his only mechanism is to, as you said, try to change the composition of the electorate. But I mean, a few things are going to happen here. A, he doesn't have the power to do this, so a lot of this is likely to be struck down. Second, it's also true some of the things that he's doing are going to have possibly a bigger impact on Republican voters than on Democratic voters. And third, as happened in the 2020 elections in places like Georgia, it tends to be that when he threatens people with taking their vote away, they tend to feel like it's more important for them to actually make sure that their vote is cast. And people who might have been thinking about staying on the sidelines are so offended by what he is doing that they show up in bigger numbers. So I think legally he doesn't have a clear route here. The SAVE Act, which he wants us to pass, is not going to pass the United States Senate. And you saw this last weekend, the biggest one single day of protest in Americans' history. All of it seems to be having the opposite impact that he intends. It's not bullying Americans into silence. It's actually causing them to show up in bigger numbers.
This is the thing about democratic politics is every action has a reaction. Right. And that true goes in every different direction. I've watched that play out in all sorts of different ways, but that's an important thing to keep in mind. Senator Chris Murphy, come back.
Thank you, man.
In person anytime. Nice to have you. Coming up, as Donald Trump's poll numbers continue to sink, what to make of a president who really does not want to do the job next. Donald Trump started to possibly distract everyone from his name being the Epstein files, or just because he felt like it. He is sinking in the polls, plummeting to the lowest levels of his second term. He's now in the same territory as Nixon during Watergate, Bush after Hurricane Katrina, and himself after January 6th. You now have gas at $4 a gallon, nationally the fastest one-month rise on record, a complete and noticeable lack of interest from the president, who really just sounds increasingly like a lame duck. And all the data we have show that he and Republicans are getting absolute cream right now as we head towards the midterms. And so Trump is trying desperately to rig the elections. Today, signing an executive order that would have the federal government essentially use the Postal Service to fundamentally seize control of all mail-in voting in the country, down to who gets to vote. USPS issuing barcodes. Alex Wagner is an MSNOW senior political analyst, host of Crooked Media's Runaway Country. Nikki McCann Ramirez is a politics reporter for Rolling Stone, and they join me now. I just asked Senator Chris Murphy about that EO today.
Yeah.
I think it's underappreciated the degree to which Trump, he's distracted and he's like weighing in on everything all the time. But the two things he's like really focused on are the ballroom and trying to seize control of the midterms, whether through the SAVE Act or this EO today.
Well, yeah, the ballroom is his ego and his real,
his passion.
If only he had stayed a real estate developer and just moved into Jersey, I'd be fine with it, right? We all would be much better off as a country. The attempts to steal the election are the things we should be most worried about. I will say, and I'm not resting on these, this is cold comfort, but I will say some elements of Trump's plan to steal the election would not redound to Republican benefits. Mail-in votes, that's going to cancel out a lot of Republican votes. I think we should nonetheless be worried about the fact that he has basically acquiesced to the reality that they cannot win this thing fair and square. So he's going to pull every lever possible. The fact that he is saying explicitly, with the express, buy-in from Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance, that the Congress should pass a crime bill to go after rogue judges. Any bulwark that stands in his way of stealing an election he is seeking to tear asunder. I mean, this is a problem for democracy, even in the big picture, even if it is not quite as bad for Democrats as Trump would like it to
I mean,
be.
the problem, the thing I always have to keep in my head about this is the desire to do it is there. The ability is maybe not. I mean, the thing I think about, Nikki, is like the Republicans just lost a special election in the Mar-a-Lago district.
Yeah.
Like, he couldn't stop in his backyard a Democrat from flipping a seat that he had carried by, I think, 10 or 11 points, 12 points. Like, so a lot of this is like, it's psych jobs, it's real, it's intense, but they don't have the wherewithal yet, at least, to actually do the thing that he wants to do.
Yeah, and I think if we go back to what Trump's motivations have been for a lot of this election interference, for his campaigns, his decision to run again, it was also the fear of accountability.
Yes.
It is the fear that if Democrats win the House and the Senate and Republicans perform poorly enough, that a slate of potentially more moderate Republicans who break from Trumpism, who are potentially interested in the anti-war, anti-corruption agenda that they purport to support, come into the Congress. Not just him, but members of his cabinet are going to be facing investigations, impeachments.
Yeah, and he even said it. He said when he was talking to the House retreat, you know, I don't want to be impeached. Because that's the other thing about like how much this matters to him. He does not care about any of these people getting elected or not. He cares about himself,
it's
right?
All about him, but it's also like what happened when Kristi Noem went to the Hill? She got extradited to the Shield of the Americas. Any of these clowns to the Hill, and they face any serious questioning, and they reveal themselves to be clownish, corrupt actors that have no business running the country.
You know, you could go broke betting on like Republicans will turn away from Trump over the last 10 years. But just in terms of the polling, so here's like he's at an all-time low across the RCP average, the Nate Silver average, and New York Times average, like really low. You've got Megyn Kelly today saying 5-alarm fire. For the love of all that's holy, we need to get out of Iran and work for full-time on people's money worries. That's she posts a UMass Amherst poll that has approval at 33%.
Yeah.
And then you've got the polling just on the Iran war, Nikki, and I thought this was really interesting because there's like the independents and then there's like, oh, everyone in MAGA loves it. But I thought this was the best way of sort of capturing it. Of Trump 2024 voters, people that voted for Donald Trump, support 63%, which is much more than the populace at large, but oppose 26%. Like that is a very sizable chunk of the coalition.
No, this is potentially the thing that's going to destroy the MAGA movement ultimately. And I think where you can see it clearly is the secession plan, is the idea that J.D. Vance was supposed to take the mantle of this movement.
Yes.
And now J.D. Vance is currently seeing his carefully laid out plan for 2028 just implode. Because something I and many people have been thinking about this month is the Iran hostage crisis, the idea that Iran knows it can affect elections. It did it to Jimmy Carter. It literally withheld the hostages until, 5 minutes after Reagan was inaugurated?
Such a good point.
No. And who's our lead negotiator in Iran right now? It's Vance.
Right.
And the more...
To the extent there are negotiations, which it's unclear there are.
So Tehran chose J.D. Vance. They knew they were screwing J.D. Vance over. Yeah. And by the way, those numbers, Chris, if you break them down by age... He is hemorrhaging young MAGA men. Like
that's where it's
got a 70% disapproval rating among young men 18 to 29. This is a collapse of the very loosely aligned coalition he rode into office with in 2024. And it is like Megyn Kelly, who I'm not one to quote.
No, she's correct.
It is a 5-alarm fire.
That is a perfectly accurate tweet, what she said. The Vance thing, too, to me, so there's this news today that he's coming out with his book, which is a little weird for Vice President to go on book tour, I think.
Sure, maybe. I mean,
not uncommon for a prospective candidate.
What's normal?
Right. So this was today. This news that he's going to have this big book about his Catholic faith come out, Communion, was like, I was like, oh, we really are in lame duck. Like that to me is like, oh, the 2028 Republican primary. That is like he is a lame duck because that news is like he's running. Obviously, we all know that. But this book is like, oh, the campaign's starting now, and that to me made me really feel like, okay, we're now in a different phase in terms of the degree to which Trump looms over this party.
Can I say this ahead of Easter Sunday as a Catholic that doesn't go to church enough? How dare he, at a moment when the head of the Catholic Church is literally from the pulpit saying those leaders who take us to war have blood on their hands, and Jesus wouldn't do this. What a great time for the stooge of the Trump administration to release a book called Communion. Like, how dare he clothe himself in the cloak of Catholicism at this precise precise moment that the head of the church is saying what you're doing is immoral, and Jesus does not approve.
Our religion is a religion of peace, said the first American.
It is. Pope Leo, FTW.
Pope who's driving them back in the folds of the church by the record numbers, according to the New York Times. I haven't felt as warmly towards the church in a while as
Chicago.
I have. Yeah, exactly. Alex Wagner, Nikki McCann-Ramirez. Thank you both.
Thanks, bud.
Still ahead. Just how expensive will gas prices get in Donald Trump's America? That's next. We're seeing one of the fastest monthly increases in gas prices ever, and you do have Donald Trump to thank for it.